Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael. Today I'm going to be making some tomato jam. If you've never had tomato jam before, you want to stick with me today because this is really easy to make, and I'm going to show you how to water bath can it so you can make it shelf stable. So I'm making a small batch today, and I've got some of my tomatoes here. I've got 3 pounds or about 1.4 kilograms of tomatoes, and you can use any kind of tomato that you've got. You can use the Roma tomatoes, or if you've got some of the heirloom tomatoes like these, you can definitely use those. I happen to have these, and I've got 3 pounds of these, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start talking about our other ingredients that we've got. This tomato jam is really great if you're want it with some cheese and some crackers. With the upcoming holidays and things that we've got coming up, if you're making those charcuterie boards, you can definitely put this tomato jam on that and have that with the meats and cheeses and your crackers and things that you've got with those. So definitely look at that. If you've got any holidays coming up, if any parties that you're going to be hosting or going to, this is going to be a great gift that you could take to that party, and it'll be shelf stable, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. So with tomatoes, because this is an acidity based food, we definitely want to use either a heavy bottom Dutch oven like this, or if you've got stainless steel pan, you want to use that. You don't want to use an aluminum pan, because the reaction with the aluminum and the acidity in the tomatoes might make an off-putting taste in your jam, and you definitely don't want that. So if you've got a Dutch oven, use that, or use some other type of heavy bottom stainless steel pot that you've got. So I've got a jalapeno here. This is complete optional. I cut this out of my garden this morning. So I'm going to put this in here for a little bit of heat. If you don't have any of the jalapenos and you've got some of the red pepper flakes, you can definitely do that. That's complete optional. I like just a little bit of heat to it. You don't want to get it so overbearing that you can't eat it, but this makes a nice little addition to it as a jalapeno. And I'm going to take my jalapeno, I've given it a good wash. I'm going to take the crown off of it here. So now that I've got the cap off that, I'm going to put some gloves on because I don't want to accidentally touch my eyes, my mouth around the edges of it, because that could really burn things. So if you don't have a problem with peppers, then you don't have to do that. But I'm just going to do it today just so that I don't have that problem. But we're just going to kind of mince this pretty small. If you want to take that membrane out of the middle with the seeds, you can definitely do that. That'll take some of the heat out of it if you don't want that in there. A nice serrano pepper would be really nice for that. And if you're really daring, you can get one of the habanero peppers and use one of those. Those are really hot on the scale, and so these are probably lowest on the scale, these jalapenos. Now that I've got that cut into little pieces, I'm going to give that a good little mince. All right, I've got my jalapeno minced up now. I'm just going to take a bench scraper and I'm going to put that into this little container here and get all of my vegetables prepped so that when we get ready to start making our jam, everything's going to come together really quickly. So let's get our vegetables prepped. That is my jalapeno. We'll set that to the side. I'm going to mince my garlic. I've got 3 cloves of garlic here, and give that a tap with my knife here and get that outer hard skin off of it. With that outer husk removed, let's give these a fine mince. All right, well, I've got my garlic now, and we'll set that to the side. I've got some ginger here. This is fresh ginger. I love the taste that the ginger adds to it, and we want to get 1 teaspoon of grated ginger. If you've never had ginger before and you get it in the stores, there's a way to do that. You just take the edge of a spoon and you can just peel the outside of it off. It comes off just like that. Really easy to peel, and we want to grate about a teaspoon of this. All right, I got the skin off a little portion of that ginger, and that's just about a knuckle that I'm going to use that for my teaspoon. And I'm just going to cut that off just like that, and I'm just going to use my knife here and go ahead and give that a good mince. All right, we've got our ginger minced now, and I just used a knife for that, and I'm just going to put that here to the side as well. Now I've got a small onion here. I'm going to go ahead and give that a dice. This is about 150 grams, and we're going to dice that up really finely. Now before we start cutting up the tomatoes, I've cleaned off my board here, and I wanted to talk to you about the water bath canning. If you've never water bath canned before, this is a water bath canner, and it's a big pot. It's 23 quart. And you want to make sure that when you get one that it's got a rack in it, because you don't want to put your jars into the bottom of a container that doesn't have some type of rack in it, because once it starts boiling, it could turn the jars over. So this kind of adds a little bit of a barrier for that. So definitely if you get a water bath canner, make sure that it's got a rack in it, or put something in the bottom of it so that it's going to keep it from actually sitting on the ground, elevated up a little bit on it so that it doesn't bang around on the bottom of it. So I just got the running my jars through my dishwasher. You want those to be really clean. You can use soap and water, that just as well. I just ran them through the dishwasher and I've got 6 here. I don't know how many this is gonna make because it just depends on the tomatoes, how they do. When they get ready to start gelling, it might take a little bit longer, might not take as long at all, but I'm gonna show you what that looks like. You definitely want to have at least 6 jars or some more standing by just in case you make some more. So with this recipe, I'll show you how many I get out of this water bath canning and making of this jam. And that way you can do the math and add more tomatoes if you've got more than what I've got here today. Might not need all 6, might only need 2. It just depends on how much it cooks down before it gels. And that's all dependent on everybody. Everybody's cooking times are going to be different. Everybody's stove's different. If you're using tomatoes that you've cut up like the heirloom tomatoes, they might cook faster because they don't have the skins on them like these are going to have on them here. So I like the skins on these. It adds a nice texture to it. So with that, what you want to do is I'm going to transfer this to the stove in just a minute, but I've got some water and I'm going to take the water and to start filling up the jars. And you want to fill each one of those up before you start filling up the canner. That way the jars don't float up on you like that. So I'm going to go ahead and move this to the stove and I'm going to finish filling it up with water and we'll come back and work on the rest of our ingredients. But when you're filling up your container here, you want to make sure that you get 1 to 2 inches above the top of the jar. So as the jar is sitting on the bottom, you get 1 to 2 inches of water on the top of that. And we're going to bring that up and we're going to hold that around 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And we'll put that onto the stove and I'll come back and we'll start working on our other ingredients and we'll get that jam started. All right, I've got my jars heating up now. The reason I'm heating those up is because when we start putting in that hot jam, we want to put that into hot or warm jars because you don't want to take a chance on shocking the jar and cracking it. So go ahead and heat your jars up while you're working on this other process and you turn that down on low once they start heating up because the jam is going to take a little while to cook today. So with that, any tomatoes, like I said, you got, we're going to leave the skins on them. I've given these a really good wash and I'm just going to take these and I'm just going to cut those down the middle just like that. We're going to put those into our pan that we've got there. And if you've got some bigger ones like I've got here, you might want to cut that into halves just so that they get a little bit smaller. And like I said, if you wanted to, you could take a immersion blender and you could break them up a little bit more. So I'm going to continue to work on these and I'll cut all these in half. And if you've got other tomatoes that you're using, cut those up as well and come back and we'll go on with our next step. Let's get prepping our jam now. So the first ingredient I've got here, I've got 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, or that's 300 grams, and we're going to put that right on the top of our tomatoes. And remember, we are making jam today, so we definitely want the sugar in there. Now I've got apple cider vinegar. I've got a 1/4 cup, or that's 60 milliliters, and we're going to put that in right there. And with your vinegar that you've got, with your apple cider vinegar, or if you want to use red wine vinegar, you can definitely do that. Just make sure that the bottle says 5% acidity on your vinegar. So definitely check that out. You want 5% acidity for this so we can preserve these. I've got my onion now. I'm just going to go ahead and add that in just like this. Now we're going to add in our minced garlic that we've got. 1 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now again, the jalapeno is optional. If you don't have one of those, you want to use a green one, you can put a little bit of color in that. We're going to add that in now, or you can use the red pepper flakes if you don't have either one of those two. Or you can leave it out completely if you don't want the heat. I've got my grated ginger here now, or minced ginger. This is optional if you don't want to put that in there. If you can't find it, you can't get access to it, you can definitely leave that out. It adds such a nice flavor to the jam. You definitely want to see if you can try to get this. And this is lemon juice. I've got 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. This is bottled lemon juice. When you are canning anything, you definitely want to make sure that you use the bottled lemon juice, because the bottled lemon juice, the acidity level is controlled in that. If you use fresh lemons, you don't have that control of that acidity level, and definitely use the bottled lemon juice if you're going to can it. Now we're going to turn this on and get this started. All right, I've got that heating up now. We want to bring this to a boil. I'm going to give this a good stir to get everything combined together. All right, my jam has come up to a boil now, and I'm going to leave this on high and boil this for about 3 minutes. And then I'm going to turn it down on low, and we want this to cook low and slow, and that will thicken up our jam, and it'll break up our tomatoes as well to make a nice consistency on that. So just stir it occasionally once we turn it down, and that way it won't be sticking to the bottom and it will continue to break down on you. And I'll show you along the way what this is looking like as it is cooking. And stay with me and we'll come back and we'll check on our jam. All right, it's been 3 minutes now. I wanted to show you what my jam looked like now. We are going to keep this uncovered. We're not going to cover it because we want that to cook down and some of the water that's coming out of the tomatoes to release out of that to cook down as well. And that's going to help all of that thicken up. And that pectin that's going to release out of those is going to make this a nice thickened tomato jam. I am back. It's been 30 minutes now and my jam is cooking down nicely. It looks like it's cooked down about 1 inch from the sides there. And so we're going to continue to let this cook and simmer down. I've got this turned down on low and I've got it just where it starts simmering, bubbling at the bottom. And we're going to continue to let this cook and I'll come back and let you see the next progress where we're at with it. I am back. My jam has been cooking an hour now. I wanted to show you what that looks like. I'll grab the spoon and pull up a little bit of it because we can see it still needs a little bit more time. Like I said earlier, your stove might cook a little bit faster, might cook it slower, but definitely I'll show you what it looks like once it gets ready to go into the jar. So we're going to let this cook just a little bit longer and I'll come back and I'll show you when it's done. All right, my jam has been cooking for an hour and a half now and it looks like it has thickened up to where I want it. I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to grab a spoon here and then I'm going to show you one way that we can test it to see what it looks like. So you can see here that it has thickened up on the spoon. Take a look at it on the back. It looks like it is nice and thickened up. So I'm going to put a saucer in the freezer. So I've got just a regular saucer. I'm going to put it in the freezer. I want it to get cold for about 5 minutes. I'll let this continue to sit here and simmer and we'll come back and I'll show you the test that we're going to use to show if the jam is gelled up. Stick with me. All right, I'm back and my little saucer here has been in the freezer and it has gotten cold. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the jam here and I'm going to put some right in the center of the plate. And I'm going to put that back into the refrigerator or the freezer. What we're doing is we're trying to simulate this to cool down and that will show you what it's going to look like once it's cool. It looks really runny now because it's warm, so you won't be able to tell, but this will be a definitive way to test that. So into the freezer it goes for a couple of minutes. You can put it in the refrigerator for about 5 and I'll come back and we'll give it the test. I am back and I just pulled the saucer out of the freezer there and I'm going to show you what this test does. So the plate's cold from where we had it in the freezer and you just take your clean finger there and just run it down through the middle. Now if the jam stays separate like it's doing right there, then you know that it's gelled up, and once it cools down to room temperature, it'll be that same consistency. So I've got a good gel on my jam. I've got my equipment set up here. I'm going to put this away. We'll come back and I'll get started filling my jars and I'll talk about the process. All right, I've got my jam here now and I've got everything clean and ready to go. I've got my lids here. Now with your lids, if you're canning, you only want to use those once. You never want to use the lids again. Once you take those off the jars after they're sealed, you can only use those one time. So I'm going to put this in a little bit of water here. I'm going to bring it up to just a little bit above room temperature and I'll come back and we'll get started filling our jars. All right, I've got my lids warmed up now. We didn't want to bring those to a boil. Back in the day when I was a kid, that was the way you had to do them. You had to bring them up to a boil. But now that technology's changed, you don't do that anymore. So I just kind of bring them up just a little bit of room temperature. That way when I put them on the jars, they're right there ready to go in the hot jars. So I'm going to grab my jar lifter here and make sure that if you don't have one of these, to get something that's very similar to it or get this exact one. Because what this does is it's going to help you a lot with the safety. This has a natural gripper on it and it has a little thing here on the side that you can grip the lip of the jar. You do not want to use a pair of tongs because the tongs could slip on you and you've got hot food and you could burn yourself. So definitely precaution, take the precautions, get something that's designed for canning, and this is a jar lifter. I'll put the link in the description box below what this is. So I'm gonna go grab one of my jars and I'll be right back. All right, I've got one of my jars here. I emptied the water out of it. I've got a little cork container here to keep that from destroying my countertop here with the wood counter that I've got on it. And my other tools I've got here, you want everything to be as clean as you can possibly get it. So I've got a funnel that I'll be using to funnel the food into the jar. And we want a 1/4 inch headspace. If you're not familiar with canning, a 1/4 inch headspace is where the food, at the top of the food and the top of the jar, you want a 1/4 inch. So this is the tool that you can use for that. Each one of these little markings is a 1/4 inch. It's a 1/4, half, 3/4, and up to 1 inch on that. So you can use that to test to see if you've got the right depth for your food on the inside. If you don't have one of these and you want to save money, and you can get a funnel with those same measurements on it. This is a 2-in-1 tool. It has the same markings here on the side, the quarter, half, 3/4, and you can take a look at that once you start filling up your jar. So this is a 2-in-1 kind of tool. You don't have to use this if you don't have to. So definitely whatever type of funnel you've got, you can use that. And then this is also a debubbler. We want to make sure that we have all of the air pockets out of the jam that we put down in there. We'll run that down the side. If you don't have one of these, you can use a chopstick. You just want to make sure you run around there to make sure there's no air bubbles, because when this processes, if there's air bubbles in it, it could change the height of the food in it and take it down from a 1/4 inch, and we definitely don't want that. So you can use the back side of this tool to debubble your jars. So we'll use that for that. And I've got a metal gripper here that I've got for my lids, and all that is, it's got a magnet on the end of it, and you can reach into your pan and pull your lids out. So that is a really nice way to do that without having to stick your hands down into that water. And with your rings, you can use your rings again as long as they are nice and not damaged. Sometimes you might see some of them that has rust on them. You definitely don't want to use those. I don't use those. I throw those away. They're so cheap now that you can just relatively just throw those away. But the lids itself, it's a one-time only. So once we use that one today, we take it off, we throw it away, we don't use that again. But you can use the rings again as long as they're not damaged. So let's get started filling our jam up now. And this is cooling down a little bit here, and this looks really nice how this is looking. So we'll take some of the jam, put into the funnel, and I'm looking for that 1/4 inch headspace. All right, so I've got my jam down into the jar now. We'll take the back of this tool, and like I say, we just want to run it down in there and make sure we don't have any air pockets in that, so we don't get a mismeasurement for our 1/4 inch of our headspace that we're looking for. And you just turn the tool over, and you can use that to measure your 1/4 inch headspace. So the first notch is a 1/4. Mine is right there where it's touching the top of it, so I know I've got a good measurement on that. And I've got a clean paper towel here with some white vinegar. We're just going to take a little bit of that, and we want to clean the top of our jar. Now be very careful when you're touching your jar, because the food in it's like we've been cooking it for a while, and the jar is hot, so be careful with that. You want to take your finger there and just run it around the top. This is another way to check to make sure that there's no cracks around the top of that jar, and that we're going to get a good seal once we put that lid on there. That'll clean any of that sticky sugar that's on there off of there, so that it's got a good seal on it. So we'll just kind of run that around the top. We'll take our little magnetic tool. We'll take one of our lids. We'll put that right on the center just like that. And we're going to take one of our rings, and we're going to put that on fingertip tight. You don't want to wrench this down on the top of it. You just want it to where it stops. All right, it's just stopped. Fingertip tight. And that is ready to go back into the canner. And I'll go grab another jar, and we will see how many we get. All right, I've got all of my jars filled up now, and I have 4 in the canner, and I've got almost 2/3 of another one here. So I'll just save this one. I'll put a lid on it. Once it cools down, I'll put it in the refrigerator, and I'll eat on this one. So definitely, if you don't want to process your tomatoes and you just want to put them in the refrigerator, you can definitely do that. Just put a lid on them, put them in the refrigerator, and you can eat them. They won't last very long once you start using them, because this is absolutely delicious. I'll let this give a cool down. I'll come back and I'll give it a taste test. But for the time being, I've got my water now and my water bath canner turned up on high, and I'm waiting for that to come to a rolling boil. I don't want it to just come to a boil. I want it to come to a rolling boil. And once it starts the rolling boil, I'll put the lid on it, and I'm going to count 10 minutes. Where I'm at my altitude. All depends on how long the processing time for the jars are. So where I'm at below 1,000 feet. And for that altitude below 1,000 feet, it's 10 minutes. And I'll put a link in the description box for the higher altitude. So you'll need to know where you're at for water bath canning, the altitude where you are. And you can follow the link there, the times on it. I'll put that in the description box, and you'll add 5 minutes depending on what altitude you're at. So I'm going to let mine come to a rolling boil, put the lid on it, let it cook for 10 minutes. We'll process it for that. Once that timer goes off, I'll turn the fire off for the heat source, remove the lid, and let the jar sit in the canner for another 5 minutes before I take them out. So once that second timer goes off at 5 minutes, I'll take my jars out. I'll meet you back here, and we'll take a look at it, and I'll tell you at that point how you can store them. I am back, and I just pulled the jars out of the canner, and they are sitting here on the countertop now. These are extremely hot. You want to put these somewhere that your family or yourself's not going to touch them until they cool down, because like I said, they have been boiling for 10 minutes here where I'm at, and then sitting in that boiling water to cooling down for another 5. So they're extremely hot. When you pick them up out of the water bath counter, you just want to make sure that you pick them straight up. I've got one of my previous jars here that I can. You just pick them straight up like this. Don't turn them sideways because they're still trying to seal. So even if it's got some water on the top of it, as hot as these are, that will evaporate off in just a few minutes with that. So when you're picking them up out of the water, just pick them straight up and down. Don't tilt them as they're getting ready to seal down on the top of you. Now, if you've never water bath canned before, the lids of these have little dimples on the top of them, and they are mounded on the top when they're not sealed, and they concave or go down when they're sealed. And so I've got one of the jars here, and you can see here that the dimple on the top of that is down. And I've got some of my peppers here. I'll put the link in the description box if you've never seen how to make pickled peppers, and I'll put that link in there. You can go check that video out. But this is how you want to store your jam on the shelf. So once these cool down, these need to sit here for about 12 to 24 hours to cool down. So I'm gonna let these cool down just a little bit. We'll come back and I'll give these a taste test. Stick with me. I am back and my jars have cooled down, and I wanted to show you what one of the jars did last night. So in case this happens to you, you won't be surprised. And we're gonna give this a taste test, what I've got left over in this jar here. So I was removing the rings on my jars here. And this one you can see here that the dimple on the top, I'll show you that. So that one is sealed. We've got a good seal on that. That one's really good. And we've got a good seal on this one here. The dimple's down. That one's sealed. You can reuse these rings, but once you take this off, when you open it, you'll have to throw that one away. You cannot reuse the lids, but you can reuse the rings on it. That one is a good one. Now this one is questionable. I took the ring off of it, and I noticed that the dimple, can you hear that? It did not go down. So I'm going to assume, even though this is attached to the top of it, that this one did not get a good seal, and I'm going to put this one in the refrigerator, and this one I'll eat on. So definitely do not put this on the can shelf if you've got one that did not seal like that. You don't want to take a chance, and I just lifted up here on the side, and you can see it did not seal on that. So definitely this is one you can still eat if it's cooled from once you just canned it. You put the lid back on it like this, and this one can go into the refrigerator, and you can eat this one. Now these are ready to go to the can shelf, and these have got a good seal on these. We've got the seal, the little dimple on the top has gone down. You can put these on the can shelf. You store these just like this with the rings off. If for some reason you come to the can shelf and you pick this up months later and the seal is off, you do not want to eat this one. You will have to throw that one away because there could be mold and bacteria in it. You do not eat the one that's been sitting on the can shelf if the lid is off of it. And the reason we're storing them on the can shelf with the rings off of them is if you left the ring on it, you might get a false seal. So if this thing came loose, there might be enough pressure with this on it that it would push it back down on it again, and there could be contaminants in it that we don't want to eat. So you store all of your canned goods like this. Once you've passed the test that the seal is on them and they're good, we'll put this one on the can shelf. And like I say, if for some reason it comes off months down the road, you'll throw this one away. But while we've got this one right now, when this one just come out of the canner, this one did not seal out of the canner, then definitely we can put this one in the refrigerator and eat this one. That's the difference between the two. And I wanted to show you it just in case this one happened. It's very rare that it does, but if it does, I wanted you to show you what it looked like when it does not seal down on the lid to the jar. So now let's give this a taste test. I'm going to show you what this looks like. I've got some crackers here and a little bit of cheese. That looks really nice with those crackers like that. And I'm going to show you my jam. It's been sitting in the refrigerator, and you can see how it's cooled down. We've got a nice consistency of jam on that. So as you're looking at it, it's hard to tell when you're canning it until you've done it a couple of times what it looks like. And remember that plate that we put into the freezer, that's a good telltale that it's going to be gelled up on you. So you want to kind of simulate it cooling down. But as long as it's really hot, it's going to be kind of a little bit of runny. You can see if this one has sit in the refrigerator overnight that we've got a good gel on those. So that's the way to tell that you've got a good gel on your jam. So let's give this a taste test and see what this looks like. We'll get one of our crackers and a little bit of cheese, and we'll put some on the top. And you can see from there we've got a nice consistency. It's holding onto our crackers. And like I said earlier in the video, if you're going to a party and you're going to be making a charcuterie board, or might want to take one of the jars that you've got to a party to give to the host or hostess, this will be a great addition to that. So let's give this a taste and we'll see what this tastes like. That is absolutely delicious. You can taste those tomatoes in there. That little bit of sweetness is coming through from that sugar that we put in there, and that little bit of that balance of that lemon juice that we've got in there. All of that with that jalapeno pepper that's coming in there. It's not overbearing. It's got just a little bit of heat to it, which is what you want. You don't want it so hot in there that you can't eat it, or nobody else will be able to enjoy it. So definitely try that. And if you want to put the jalapeno in there, you can definitely take the white part out of it, take the seeds out of it, and that'll take a lot of the heat out of it as well. So give this one a try. I know you're going to love this recipe. If you've never canned before, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you how yours turned out. If you like this content, maybe you might consider giving me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And while you're at it, check out one of these other 2 videos over here on the side. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment. I want to hear how your tomato jam turned out. If you've never heard of tomato jam, leave me a comment, and I know you're going to want to try this recipe. I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye now.